Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football. Conference championship weekend is here. We've got a big episode of Saturday Cadence for you guys as we preview all these championship games coming into the weekend, setting the college football playoff field. So welcome into Saturday Cadence, the heartbeat of college football. My name is Blake Biscardi. David Wertheim, Grant Kincaid alongside. David, I'm throwing it right to you as we open the show tonight. Big weekend of conference championship games. We have a 1-2 game in the Big Ten, only the third time in conference history it's happened. First time since Ohio State, Michigan, the infamous game of the century in 2006. What storylines are sticking out to you as it relates to all of these games this weekend and setting the college football playoff field on Selection Sunday?
Yeah, well, starting with that game, obviously a big news of the week, Brian Hartline taking the job at USF. And we'll just see how much of a distraction that is for Ohio State. He's going to stay with the Buckeyes through this postseason run. So this game and then whatever subsequent games they play in the playoff. But we'll see. We'll see how distracted they are. Indiana, obviously 12-0. They've kind of beat up on everybody. A couple of close games, Iowa and Penn State. But they've looked really good this whole season, and certainly will be motivated and not distracted as we enter Saturday. So just depends on what Ohio State comes out with. We'll know by the end of the first quarter where their mindset's at, especially on offense. The defense with Matt Patricia, obviously you think they'll hold strong. They haven't allowed They haven't allowed 17 points or more to a single opponent this season, and then coming off a big emotional win against Michigan as well. So we'll just see where the Buckeyes' focus is at. In the Big 12, BYU kind of fighting for their lives here. They'll play Texas Tech. Texas Tech they have won every single game by 20 or more points, with the exception of the one game they lost, which of course was without their starting quarterback, Baron Morton. So we'll see how that goes this weekend for BYU and Texas Tech. Texas Tech looks to be in either way. They're at number 5. But we'll see where their seeding ends up if they lose to BYU, and then that would ultimately push BYU in. And then the SEC, we get another classic, Alabama and Georgia. We'll see if, Kirby Smart and Kalen DeBoer battling it out again. It's been kind of a struggle here recently. It's been a little bit one-sided. So this will be a really interesting game as well. Alabama seems to be in anyway. The committee moved them up. So we'll see what happens there as well. 3 great games. Really excited.
David, you were talking about the Brian Hartline news to USF, and I know that kind of came as a shock to the college football world, especially with the timing of it. And Ryan Day said this yesterday, the timing's not great, and that's, him stating the obvious. But I think it just points to a bigger problem, because he said it's not Brian Hartline's fault, and it's not even USF's fault. It's the college football calendar's fault, because you're Ryan Day, and this week you're planning for a Big Ten championship game. You're just coming off the rivalry game. You've got National Signing Day on Wednesday. Then you have coaching decisions that need to be made because of National Signing Day and all these things. So the college football calendar, we know, is so compressed and a mess. But what Day emphasized too is, number one, Brian Hartline said he wants to finish this thing the right way, and he's going to stay throughout the college football playoff. There might be some mixed emotions and reactions there from Buckeye Nation, but what Ryan Day emphasized was the stability that's here in Columbus, and the culture is strong. That was his main soundbite from his availability on Wednesday when he met with the media, and he's right about that. So when you hear him say something this way, what does that mean to you in relation to this Brian Hartline news, how Ohio State's going to handle it, and if it's going to affect the game? And then, Grant, I want you to follow David with your thoughts.
Well, obviously they're going to say all those things, and they looked pretty confident still in the interviews that, Blake, you were at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on these last couple of days. Everybody's been confident, from Ryan Day to Julian Sayin. You talked to Phillip Daniels, Caden McDonald. So they look confident. But ultimately, we're going to see what happens on the field. Brian Hartline, I think, will want to go out the right way, obviously. You think of a lot of guys who are 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But Hartline's a guy who played at Ohio State. He's been a coach at Ohio State now for a number of years. He obviously loves Ohio State. And I think that he will try and keep his guys motivated. And I think they will stay motivated, kind of finishing their mission here. There's no bearing on next year yet. You just got to finish out the job. So Ryan Day's culture comment made a lot of sense to me. I think that's what he's preached, really, as long as he's been the head coach. So I wasn't surprised to hear that.
Yeah, it definitely is a schedule issue, and obviously there's sound bites and video bites of coaches all over the country right now talking about all kinds of issues in college football. Lane Kiffin, another victim kind of that, if you want to call it that. But as far as Ohio State goes, if anyone's going to be unflappable at this point, it's going to be Ryan Day. It is going to be a big loss, though, and no matter how you want to put it, you can say stability and culture and all that, but when the players are on the field, at some point there's going to be a point. At some point, they're gonna that's going to be in the back of their mind, and Brian Hartline has to have 1 foot maybe out the door in one way. But you hope that it doesn't affect them against Indiana, but it is something that it could happen.
So let's stay right here and jump into this Big Ten preview. We're going to bookend these previews. We'll start Big Ten and SEC. David, we're talking about Ohio State's preparation into this week. They've overcome adversity before. We know the run that they're on right now, winning 16 straight games. And Ohio State here, this is a goal that they wanted to accomplish. They won a title last year. They didn't win the rivalry game, and they did not win the Big Ten this year. They've beaten Michigan so far. That's the first goal, check. But that's not a destination for Ohio State. That's a goal. So now winning the Big Ten, that's why I think this team is still going to be focused. But we have really good on good here. This is elite versus elite. It's 1 versus 2. Ryan Day versus Kurt Cignetti. You have stability versus something that's brand new that Cignetti's building in a hurry. Julian Sam, Fernando Mendoza, Heisman implications here. We have good defense, good defense, good offense, good offense. What is the matchup that you want to key in the most in this matchup that you think is going to be the one that can decide this game?
Oh, it's 100% the line play on both sides. If one team can win these matchups, I think they're in a golden position to win the game. Ohio State's D line versus Indiana's O line, and then vice versa, Indiana's D line versus Ohio State's O line. That's going to open up everything else, right? That's going to open up your running game. That's going to open up your downfield passing. That's going to open up your intermediate passing. So if one of these D lines or one of these O lines can kind of take control, I think ultimately that's where the game's decided. Both teams have very good units on both sides of the ball, so it should be fascinating to watch, and that's why this is a 1 versus 2 game. But I think those would certainly be the matchups to watch.
Grant, when you see this matchup, Julian Sam, Fernando Mendoza, they've been the 2 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten and in the country for most of the season, especially down the stretch here. The winner is thought to be the Heisman frontrunner and favorite and should win the award, in my opinion, here with the head-to-head. How do you see these 2 quarterbacks matching up? What advantages do you see? Which quarterback is more battle-tested? How do you think each quarterback is going to handle the moment of this game in Indianapolis here? Because we've seen Julian Sayin respond to the biggest adversity he's had all season against Michigan, throws a pick on the second play of the game, comes back. He's 18 for his next 21 with a couple touchdown passes, 2 big plays to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Ohio State wins the game. Fernando Mendoza has been solid and steady, but in the games against the better pass defenses like Penn State and Iowa, now he's only thrown for 215 and 233 in those games. So we're looking at this and saying, okay, against the good pass defenses, can Elijah Surratt and these receivers get open? Ohio State is the #1 pass defense in the country. How do you see this quarterback battle shaping this game?
Well, I think it is a huge storyline, and like you said, I agree. The way the odds are shaking out, you could flip a coin with these 2 guys as far as the Heisman, and it is great that we get to see them in a matchup. For all the marbles here in the Big Ten. Uh, you know, Obviously, I think Sayin has because he has Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate on his side, and I think they're both very battle tested. I think the fact that, like you said, Julian Sayin second pass of the game throws a pick, feels the weight of the world, the weight of the rivalry the past 4 years. Ryan Day, just imagine that's got to be going through his head at some point. But then he came back, and Ohio State came back, and he led them to, a game that would say that he is battle tested, even though some people say throughout the season that Ohio State hadn't been. And this would be, his next kind of data point to say, this guy is Heisman worthy. He's played against these top defenses, and he's being able to respond. But obviously, like you said, Ohio State's defense, Matt Patricia, he's going to have something ready for Mendoza that Mendoza probably is not used to, or something that he hasn't seen. Obviously they went on the road and they beat Oregon, but Oregon's not the team, particularly on defense, that Ohio State is really at all. So if, like you said, if he's able to pull it off against Ohio State and this defense, feel free to give him the Heisman. but I think it's going to be really tough for him to do so.
David, when you see this matchup between these two teams, so Joel Klatt in previous years has called it an out pitch, or like the trump card that we're looking at for either of these two teams. Which team has that trump card, and what is it in this matchup? Let's say this really is elite on elite. These are even rosters, even everything. Which team has the trump card, and what is it?
It's Jeremiah Smith. He's the best player in the country. If you just throw it up there, even if there's three guys like we saw against Oregon last year, like he still has a reasonable chance of making the catch. Ultimately, he's been the best player in college football the last 2 seasons. He'll be a first overall draft choice soon. And so, as such, I think that's your trump card. Indiana will certainly do their best to defend him, as they should. That's when you play if you're playing Euchre, that's when you play left. You play Carnell Tate, and there's your kind of other trump card. And so I think Ohio State's wide receivers are ones that can bail you. I mean, just look at what they did last week against Michigan. Their top three receivers all caught a touchdown and really changed the game. So that's what can happen again this week. Indiana has to be careful, obviously, but I think that's where Ohio State has to feel good.
So let's go ahead and do this now since we're into the postseason. We're going to pick the game right now, right afterwards, and just do a full preview and pick for each of these games. The line on this is Ohio State favored by 4.5. That's down from the 5.5 where it opened. David, then Grant, what is your pick in the Big Ten championship game and for the number one seed in the college football playoff?
My pick is Indiana. I worry about Ohio State's distraction. I think Indiana is going to be more locked in. Obviously, Indianapolis. I think it'll be a majority Indiana fans. I've been hearing rumors of ticket freezes and some other shenanigans going on. So I think Indiana will have a majority. I don't think it'll be anything crazy, but I do think there will be a majority. And I think this will be a game that comes down in the fourth quarter. And Indiana's just continue to win all year. And it's hard to pick, right? Because Ohio State's won 16 in a row. Indiana's won 12 in a row. They both just keep winning. And this isn't to say that Indiana's going to beat Ohio State again when they could match up in the playoff, but I think this Saturday, coming off of an emotional win for Ohio State, and with the Hartline news and just everything that's gone on, it wouldn't surprise me if Indiana takes this. So I'm going to pick that.
I do think, as time goes on, that the line could get tighter, and I think this is going to be a lot closer game than some may think. But at the end of the day, I think Ohio State's talent, the talent gap will be the difference. And if it sits at 5.5 right now, I would probably take that as well.
So I've looked at this game and I've thought about this with Indiana, and we've seen their best all year. They've been in prove-it mode. Ohio State, I still think we have another gear to see for the Buckeyes, which I think that we do see. Now, this Brian Hartline news has tightened my score prediction a little bit here, but I do like the Buckeyes, and I do think they can win the game by 10 points, so I'm going to take Ohio State. Let's go ahead and move to the ACC here. This is one of the more wild conference championship matchups because we have a 5-loss team in there with Duke. They're facing Virginia. Potential playoff berth on the line here. David, what do you think of when you look at this matchup, how it relates to the playoff? And then if you're Miami, who are you rooting for?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting challenge for Duke here. They have an opportunity to go out and win the ACC, and who knows what could happen after that. So remember, it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. So if they can beat Virginia and kind of sneak in there, we'll see what happens. But for Virginia, ultimately, this could be a win and in game. They're sitting there at 17. It hasn't been a great year, and just really frustrating almost for college football fans that we've gotten to a point where it's number 17 Virginia against 7-5 Duke to win the ACC. And with Miami, like you said, on the outside looking in, I think Miami needs to. I don't even know who they need to root for, honestly. I think this is just a game that you watch and enjoy, and because anything can happen. It's a 4.5-point spread. This should be a game that is also kind of sloppy into the fourth quarter. So I'm excited for this one too. This will be really fascinating, and then seeing what happens with Miami the next day.
Grant, when you see this matchup, I think Virginia, they'll get in the playoff with a win because they're going to be one of the 5 highest ranked conference champions. What would that mean for a program like Virginia to go ahead and make a college football playoff berth? Preseason, you're looking at this. Well, we got Miami, Florida State gets a big one over Alabama early on. Then you have Georgia Tech being good, and all of a sudden Virginia just stays really steady. What would it mean for this program to win this ACC title and then get an auto bid to the college football playoff?
Oh, I mean, it would be enormous. of all the teams, of all the Power Five kind of middle teams that I would have expected to make a run early in this 12-team playoff, I would not have expected UVA. It's like you said, all season they've been really steady, and for them to pull off 10 wins, albeit in a weaker ACC, you have to give a lot of credit to everyone on that coaching staff and team. I'm sure guys are going to be picked off of that coaching staff because of the job they've done, even having a shot at the playoff and being in the ACC championship. But yeah, you have to give them huge props. But obviously, this weekend you're playing a five-loss Duke team, and they're coming in as a really dangerous team with nothing to lose. So now is your time to prove that you are a playoff team.
So let's go ahead and pick this game here. We've got the spread sitting at 4 right now. It opened at 2.5. Virginia's favored. David, when you see this game, the spread is 4. Who do you have?
I'm taking Duke for the fun of it. I like chaos. Duke winning would be kind of chaotic. So give me the Blue Devils.
Yeah, I think Duke with absolutely nothing to lose, and Mensa is a really good quarterback. It's going to be fun to kind of see him on the national stage because he's a guy that may be kind of flying under the radar, but I love it, and I think Duke is going to have a shot. I think they're going to pull it off.
I think Duke has a shot in this game too. You're right that Mensa's been great. Shepard's a talented running back, and then I'm gonna go take Virginia. I'm gonna be different. I'll take Virginia to win and get into the playoff there. But let's go Big 12, and then we'll hit the SEC. Big 12 has a big spread. This is 12.5. We saw Texas Tech dominate this game against BYU earlier in the season. That's what I'm expecting, more of the same. David, how can BYU change this? The Kalani Sitake news, he's staying. Rumored to Penn State. There was talks, but he is going to stay with BYU. How does BYU handle that this week, or does that have no impact on the game?
Well, I think they'll certainly be emotional and fired up and try and win this one. And, ultimately, Texas Tech, like you said, has been domination pretty much all year. They have won every single game by 20 points, with the exception of when they lost their starting quarterback, like I said earlier. So I think ultimately, like you said, it will be a dominant Texas Tech victory. BYU needs to keep it close. They need a turnover or two. They need their lines to play well. I mean, it's just classic football cliche, but ultimately that's where the game is won and lost, and they got to, keep it controlled themselves. Time of possession is key. So that's how you win football games against teams that are probably out athleting you. And as such, I do think Texas Tech ultimately wins, but that is how BYU can keep it close, and they certainly have a chance to do so.
Right, Jacob Rodriguez has entered the Heisman conversation, an extremely talented linebacker. He's a turnover machine. He has more turnovers than a lot of teams in the FBS, just himself. He's gotten some snaps on offense. He's a huge impact player, and we've seen what this Texas Tech offense can do, but their hallmark is the defense. Do you see this as another suffocating effort for the Red Raiders? How do you see this matchup playing out again? It's hard to beat a team twice, but it was so dominant the first time. What are you expecting to see on Saturday?
I'm definitely expecting to see more of the same, but that with the line being where it is right now, like Dave said, and I think that there's going to be a really emotional effort from BYU. Him coming back, they're going to be rallying around something, and obviously being in the championship game and having a second shot at it, I would definitely take BYU to cover. But Texas, like you said, they're going to be suffocating and they're going to win.
So if we're picking this game, the spread is 12.5. David, start us off here. How do you see the Big 12 champion playing off? And if you're picking Texas Tech, are they locked in with a bye at the 4 seed, or do you think they have the potential to climb?
Ultimately, I'm going to pick Texas Tech here just based on the numbers, that 20-point plus margin. I think they get close to that again. I think obviously the 12.5 gives a little bit of room there. I think they are pretty much locked in at 4. I think, well, it depends. I think it depends on if Alabama can beat Georgia. Maybe there's a swap there. If Ohio State loses to Indiana, I think they're at the lowest, ranked 3. That's assuming Georgia loses, in which case Texas Tech would be 4. But yeah, I think Texas Tech covers, and I think that they obviously will get a first round bye.
I'm with you guys here, David. I'm going to take Texas Tech. I think this is going to be another game that they're in control the whole way. And I think BYU falls out of the playoff opening a spot. Will it be Miami? Will it be Vandy? We're going to find out. But I think Texas Tech dominates and handles this game, and BYU will not have an argument as a playoff team. SEC championship here, rematch, Alabama, Georgia. Alabama dominated the first half of this game. The last time that was a story. Defense in the second half. Georgia did not have enough to come back and win the game. So Alabama took the first one. That's been how the series has gone. Georgia has an Alabama problem here. It's not just a Nick Saban issue. David, looking at this matchup, is something different this time now. This game first took place in September. We're sitting here in December. I think trend-wise, Georgia is playing better football. I still have concerns about their running game and the backside of that defense. But how do you see this playing out here now in this second?
I see Georgia winning this one. Kirby does have an Alabama problem for sure, but I'm just not sold on Alabama. 2 losses, a lot of close wins, including last week against Auburn. It's just been a weird year for Alabama. Florida State to start the year, obviously. They win some games, close win at Georgia, close win at Mizzou, close win at South Carolina. Now they're basically playing a road game in Atlanta against Georgia. And I think that it's hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. So, we saw that last year, Oregon, Ohio State, obviously the prime example. And I think Georgia's able to rebound this time. And I think they're able to take it. I think they're a better team. Like I said, Alabama's been inconsistent. They lose to Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago at home. And I think Georgia takes this one.
Grant, you're looking at this matchup and you are completely neutral here, right? Is there, for Georgia, when you're seeing Alabama, is this a mental thing for Georgia, or do you just think that they just don't execute in these games? Like, what do you think the problem is for Georgia when they play Alabama, and how does Kirby Smart fix it here on the big stage in the SEC championship game? Because yes, they lost, but if you'd win one of the 2 matchups, you'd rather win the one that gives you a conference title and a bye in the college football playoff. So what can Georgia do here to erase this Alabama problem?
I definitely think it is mental. Georgia has every bit the athletes and the coaching staff to win the games that they do lose to Alabama. But I think, as time goes on, Saban-less Alabama is going to be harder and harder to not, to let that affect you against, because like you said, Alabama has had kind of a tumultuous season, and you can't really put a finger on who they are as a team. And I think Georgia's peaking at the right time.
I think Georgia's peaking at the right time too. I've thought for the last week or month that they are the top team in the SEC. And if you're giving me a list of teams that I think could win a national title, I think they're in my top 3. They would be 3rd behind Ohio State and Notre Dame, which ironically may not make the college football playoff, apparently. So lots of factors here. But David, just coming back to you real quick, what are the matchup advantages here in this second game for either of these 2 teams? Like we were talking about with Ohio State and like we were talking about with Indiana, the out pitch, the trump card. Which team has the trump card in this matchup? Because they're pretty even when you're looking in terms of strengths and weaknesses.
Honestly, I'm not sure either team does, and that's going to be pretty interesting. I think, like you said, there it's very even. Georgia obviously known for their running game, and it's been pretty good this year. Alabama with Ryan Williams and those wide receivers has a chance to make a big play at any time. Jeremy Bernard's been really good for them. Ty Simpson was a Heisman candidate until a couple of weeks ago. So this I really don't know. I mean, this is a fascinating game, and not really what you want from Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship game, right? Again, it's going to come down to offensive line play. It's going to come down to ball security. It's going to come down to time of possession, like I always say. But that's what you want, right? It's going to be a good football game. I don't expect a blowout either way. And I don't really know what the trump card is. Somebody's going to pull it out at some point. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, normally you see this kind of matchup and you look across the sidelines, and I respect both coaches, but Kirby Smart is Kirby Smart for a reason, but Kirby Smart has an Alabama problem. So Kirby Smart's not the trump card in this game. And that to me is when I would look, because David, I think you have it correct. I don't think either team has a definitive answer like a Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. I just don't. And I would default to Kirby Smart next, but I can't trust in Kirby Smart in this game. So it is hard to tell. But Grant, we've seen Kirby Smart in big games. There's something that happens on special teams. There's some play. So I think if one coach is more likely to do it, it would be Kirby. But then we just saw Kalen DeBoer against Auburn go for 4th and 5 inside the 20 when they could have kicked a field goal to go up by 3 in a tie game. So how do you see this, Grant? Do you see either team having a trump card, or which team is more likely to make that X play or that game-changing play late in the game to get momentum?
I think Georgia right now, I think Georgia just has the edge mentally and execution wise as a team. I think that's just who I trust on both sides of the ball more. And I think, like we've all said earlier in the season, this is Alabama easily. But I think Georgia right now is playing at the level and getting that second shot. I think this is just it's screaming Georgia.
So let's pick this game here. We're sitting with a spread that is at 4. David, when you see this matchup, who do you think is going to win, and what do you think is going to be the score? Because again, we've seen this matchup. How do you see this playing out?
I like Georgia here, and we've kind of talked about all the reasons why, and obviously Grant kind of went into it as well. But I see Georgia winning this game. I see them covering. I just don't think that it's really going to be a blowout one way or the other. 2.5 spread gives me a lot of confidence. Georgia can even walk it off with a field goal, right? So I like Georgia in the end. I like them to cover the 2.5. I don't think it'll be much more than that.
Yeah, I have Georgia covering as well. I think it's all Georgia.
Yeah, I misspoke saying the spread was 4. It is sitting at 2.5, David. Thank you for the correction there. This game was a field goal game before Alabama won it. I think it's the inverse this time. I think Georgia wins it by a field goal. I like 27-24 again. So I'm going to take the Georgia Bulldogs to win it, to get a bye in the college football playoff. And then we're going to see a very interesting backfill of this college football playoff of it's going to be Alabama, Miami, BYU, Notre Dame. Very interesting debate here on Selection Sunday. But David, closing thoughts here, winding down the show on Conference Championship weekend.
Yeah, a bunch of great games as always. And we'll be watching them all. Should be a lot of fun game. And really the first edition of the games we remember are played in December. So that'll be exciting as we work towards the playoff. Selection Sunday this Sunday. So it'll be exciting to kind of follow that, see where everybody ends up, and hopefully after a great slate of games on Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to have a full breakdown for you of the selection show, maybe some early looks at some picks there on the Monday show. Guys, thank you for tuning in. We have a great weekend of college football ahead. Conference championship weekends, the college football playoff field is going to be set. Selection show sitting there at 12 o'clock on Sunday. Enjoy the weekend of games. Guys, we'll see you on the Monday show. God bless.